Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our 6th Freedom for Truth conference. Thank you to everyone joining us today because each one of you is instrumental in taking part of the biggest fight for humanity, the fight for freedom. We are all so tired of watching children's mental health and their love for life and imagination crumble, and our elderly be neglected by the same system that said we're protecting them with these tyrannical measures. This conference is about taking our power back and bringing our independence and our roots back. This conference is not about being anti-anything. This conference is about being pro-unity and pro-life and bringing the diversity of people together for one common cause, the cause of life. This conference is about empowering and educating people from all over the country and even the world to bring the change that humanity needs. And we are making that change happen because the shift is already here and their desperation is becoming so clear. And while they aim to constrain us in limiting our beliefs and shackles, they inadvertently created a spiritual awakening. Because if this was about our health, they wouldn't have had the world living in fear and stress when we know that stress is the ultimate cause of death and disease. We are spiritual beings far more capable than we have been led to believe. And if you look back in history, humans, like all other animals, have solely relied on intuition and our natural instincts in order to survive. However, as we've evolved into a highly intelligent and sophisticated species, many of us have lost touch with those instincts. Instead, we see humanity putting faith in technology and the ever-changing opinions of friends and family and what society deems to be normal. But this created crisis has created the greatest mass awakening of mankind, and this is a spiritual war. And it's beautiful to see God test so many of his warriors of faith and courage and watch them all come together for this great cause of life. This fight isn't about division. This is about saving humanity, even when humanity doesn't recognize that they need to be saved. Never in history has humanity been saved by the ones being complacent and following the orders. Humanity has been saved by the ones rising and recognizing the corruption and making sacrifices to hold on to nature's intended purpose for us. I just want to finish off this intro by saying Kim and David Martin are joining us today. And I just have to say this. Not only are they an incredible dynamic duo, they are a perfect example of the universe's ability to turn two beings and intertwine it into one powerful force. I wanted to give a special thank you for joining us today and for the fight and light that you're bringing into this world. We are grateful and honored to have you join us today.
Wow.
Thank you, Tanya. That's beautiful.
You.
We're grateful to be here.
Very, very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So just to start things off, I'm going to hand the mic over to my soul sister, Alicia, who's just going to cover some important housekeeping rules before we really get the show started.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you for everyone else joining us today. And a big thank you, of course, to our special guests. As Tanya said, we are immensely honored and grateful for having you both here. So before we begin, I will go over some housekeeping rules for today's conference. Please, first and foremost, like, share, and comment in order to break the algorithm, as we have to deal with heavy censorship, as you all know. Please note that you can find the closed captioning option through the 3 dots on the right-hand corner, and you can turn it on or off should you need. We are having our action poll that will be posted in the chat several times throughout the conference and will also be available on our website, thefreedomorg.ca, which you can find under the Actions tab. We will keep this poll up for 7 days before we close it out, and the link to our website will also be posted throughout the meeting in the chat bar. Please note that the survey will pop up behind the video screen, so if you can't see it, you will need to minimize the video screen. For questions, if you have for our guests, please post them in the chat in all capital letters, and we will do our best to get to as many of them as we can. And Q&A will be after all of our guests have spoken. And of course, as the Freedom Org are 100% volunteer run and operated, donations are always appreciated, and you can donate at thefreedomorg.ca via PayPal or e-transfer. Now for our incredible speakers sharing their fight and light to all of us. Thank you again. I'd like to hand it off to my soul sister and warrior, Amanda, who will be introducing our speakers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alicia. Our guests tonight have been instrumental in many people's journey of awakening. Mine absolutely being one of them. As a couple, they have been at the forefront of some of the most important conversations of our time, And if you haven't heard them speak, now is that time. They bring a passion and commitment to the topic of how did we get here? And more importantly, they have extended to us all the connections needed to forge strong bonds that will sustain us in the tumultuous times ahead, starting from within and uniting as a whole. Speaking of the future, Kim and David have a lot to say about the future of humanity, why it is important to understand what humanity was built on and why, so we can prevent making these mistakes all over again. It is a time to stop avoiding and deflecting these conversations and truly, genuinely take our power back as a species in this universe, remembering who we are. I want to encourage everyone to read more about their unique experiences as individuals and now as a couple, their beautiful story, their beautiful connection, sharing their time and their wisdom with us. Two souls truly ahead of their time, and a gift to the rest of us, should you choose to listen. Each have very impressive credentials, but today isn't about the letters they carry behind their name. Rather, it is their uncanny ability to talk about life and liberty, something we are all doing based on our own experiences that really need no credentials. Asking the important questions we all have, and I, for one, am grateful for their passion and insight to connect us together. This is their gift. I am so excited to have you both. And let me say, first and foremost, welcome to Canada.
Thank
and I
you.
wish it could have been in person, but next time.
One day, definitely.
That'll happen soon enough.
Yes, it will. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
It's lovely,
much.
lovely, lovely to be here.
Yes.
We are so glad to have you. So we were hoping that you guys could talk to us a little bit about the future and humanity.
Well, so I love the kickoff, and thank you all for joining us in this conversation. It's a delight when we have the chance to slow down. Most of the time, we're trying to cram a message into either a 30-minute Butterfly of the Week or the hour Activate Humanity show. So it's nice to slow down in the evening here and drop into a little bit of a longer conversation. But I think it's important to start with maybe an acknowledgement that one of the things that we very passionately share is the recognition that we've waited for experts or voices or inspiration for a very, very long time, because we've been conditioned to think that there's a something out there, someone or something or whatever it is, that there's an out there that has answers. And one of the things that I think Kim and I are super passionate about is what I call voyeuristic living. And what I mean by that is that for us to be able to credibly talk about a present or a future of humanity, it's incumbent for us not just to live it, but to live it in a way that people can see it. And there's a raw authenticity that I think many people have struggled with. And I want to kick it over to Kim, because I think understanding literally the moment of our connection, for all of the messiness and everything else that it was, which it was actually epically messy. But there's something really beautiful about how Kim kind of streaked across the night sky like a meteor and burned into my consciousness, her first impression to me, which set the stage for the Dave and Kim that people now know. And I think it'd be worth if you just kind of go ahead and deliver the punchline, and then let's work our way into the what does that actually mean?
Love to.
Yeah.
David and I met in Antarctica in a volcano, which is, if you're going to do a love story, why not start there? And it was my birthday. And in a nutshell, a whole lot of entrepreneurs were on a boat, and they weren't actually, people that were presenting and getting up there weren't being authentic, and they weren't telling their story in regards to how they actually, all the trials and challenges and all the things that come with having your own company, which we've all had that have had their own company. And no one was being authentic and kind of vulnerable and getting up there going, you know what, I did it tough. And, I did it tough. I was raising a daughter by myself and was doing ridiculous hours and all those things. And, people want to connect with real, authentic people's journeys so then they can learn by it. And no one was getting up there. And then David gets up, and I didn't know him or anything about him, and he starts talking, but he was so real and he was sharing his story, like all of it, what it had cost in regards to relationship, his well-being, kind of everything. And I finally just went, yes, someone's got really, really real. And what I also saw was a lot of pain in his eyes, and I thought, why also isn't he, so just to myself, why isn't he really fully living himself? I know he knows and he's sharing it, but there's just a piece in his world where he's giving so much of himself. And I thought, wow, what if he was in his full capacity on that stage or in life and doing what he does? Because he's been doing, everyone sees him now, but he's been doing this kind of thing for 30 years and doing so much for so many all over the world. It's been incredible. And I just thought, imagine, and I saw it for a split second, him fully in his full capacity, like he would be such a force, and already he was a force. And I thought, me being me, must share my wisdom. And I thought, I can't contain myself. I must thank him for being authentic, and then say, why is your soul dying?
Yeah,
so,
but that's not how you said it.
No, that's not how I said it. So I went over to him, and I don't know where this came from, but I'll say it anyway. And I said, I'm clearly the alpha female on this boat, and you're clearly the alpha male. I should find you attractive, but I don't. But I could. And he just went, and I said, and what I meant by that was our two forces should automatically come together, but his minimum, or his the energy where he was not in his full capacity, kind of, if he was in that space, we should automatically come together. And I said, why are you letting your soul die? And where are you in your life? And what if you're on your deathbed looking over your life? What would you be happy with it? And what if you were, in your full capacity? Imagine what you'd be capable of. And he's going, my God, who is this Australian woman going to town on him? So that was kind of our first.
That's our get acquainted session.
2 hours of me unloading on this poor guy, this poor stranger from America that was there. But I just wanted him to fully live. And it's just something that I've, that's always, for a long, long time, been a thing that I've, just have a passion for is fully living. And, I'm not also very much not immune from, very much a lot of, stress and challenges in life. And David's been amazing for me, because I've had a lot of stuff I went through that he's helped me back. But what we're trying to do, and what we try to help other people do, is of course share a lot of the information, but actually in all of this, get really real and let your essence shine. Because as the girls have said earlier, we are these forces and these powerful beings. And even if we let go of all the stuff that isn't ours, which what we've been trying to do together, and just with the essence of Kim and David, like, yes, we are a force, and we don't want the stories of, childhood or this, that, or the other, and any minimizing anybody or story or anything. We want to shine fully and fully live and be the essence of that and teach that. And I think that is a huge key in all of this as well.
Yeah.
By living by example, because there's nothing stronger than life force energy, and nothing, no matter what they manufacture, create, try to do to us, that is the absolute force of everything. And there's a lot we can do just personally and in communities and stuff to help other people, look at them and say, how are you going? And just really make sure we look after each other, because, that's just so, so important.
Well, and I think the importance of that story, besides, just the blunt, self-evident nature of, you got a great picture of Kim's capacity
the
to
romance
cut
of it all
through the crap and get right to the point of it. But one of the things that I learned over the past probably 30 years of working with the very much of the establishment, the systems that are in fact running this charade that we're living through right now. One of the things that was very important is the recognition, because for those of you not familiar with my life and my journey, I mean, I had spent 30 years in a relationship that was really, really quite taxing for a bunch of psychological and depression and a bunch of other issues. And so one of the things I found out very early on was that the current system, if we think about the way we manipulate our leaders, we manipulate people in power, is that an enormous number of men are compromised by taking advantage of the broken narrative of relationship. And so it's very, very common. I mean, if you look at most of the world's leaders right now, look at the picture of the G7 summit, look at the picture of world leaders, the number of them who have something to hide because they haven't been able to be authentic in relationship actually builds this underlying current of compromise. And most people don't realize that the horrible decisions that are being made, right? And let's just, for the convenience of this conversation, on the south side of the border and the north side of the border and on every other border that we can imagine right now, we have people in leadership who are not fit for leadership because they have allowed the fundamental human relationship to break. And then through that breaking, then compromise, and then I know something you don't know. And then before long, you get painted into behaviors where your best humanity doesn't have a chance of showing up because you're so fearful that you'll be called out on the corruption or on the violations or on the personal challenges that you've never really honestly addressed. And I think that, having been through, and this is the best part about my life experience is, having been through being seduced by the very people who are running this current craziness, I know their tools. And one of their tools is to take advantage of weaknesses in relationship, to take advantage and exploit. And by the way, it is sexist and it's genderist and whatever else. I don't give a shit. I'm going to say it. The problem is most men are ultimately compromised because they decide that mission is more important than their relationship. They decide that ego is more important than the relationship. And not surprisingly, it's kind of an old, probably 7,000, 8,000-year-old trick, which is if you can compromise the person who has the illusion of power, then there is no question that the decisions that person is going to make are compromised. And I would submit to you that we would not be living in the current lockdown global conspiracy that we're living in right now if men had the decency of honoring relationships or having the integrity to confront relationships that are harmful and move to a space where they can live in a transparent way. It is the secrets that are killing us. And it's the dysfunction of our relationships that are killing us. And part of the value that Kim and I feel very passionate about bringing to these conversations is, yes, I can answer any question that anybody would ever have on Anthony Fauci or on, Bill Gates or on funding or on spike proteins and the manipulation of bioweapons and stuff like that. But the real questions are we willing to get real about who we are? And more importantly, are we willing to open up our lives to have the uncomfortable questions about, can we have authentic integrity in our relationships? Because if we can do that, then no one can get us in a compromising position.
Nice.
David and Kim, amazing. One of the things that the four of us gals were talking about was watching your documentary that you just did, David, the future dreaming, and really loving the deep thinking, but so simply put. And it really just comes back to, how do we just get back to the simple parts of life? And one of the things that we were talking about on there was the inefficiency of a bottle of Coke.
Yeah.
And going through all of the things that have to happen in order for that Coke to get cold in your refrigerator. And is it conceivable that it's just a stupid idea to drink a bottle of Coke and maybe we just need a glass of water? And I love the simplicity that you bring to that. Could you talk a little bit more for people who haven't seen Future Dreaming? And if you haven't watched it already, folks, please, you've got to watch this documentary. It's not only mind stimulating. And I love how you pause in it so often, David, where I sit in it and I just resonated in so much of what you had to say. And the scenery in it is also stunning. You know, when you're in the Antarctic, and it was just, everything was just visually stunning as well. So please talk to our viewers a little bit about, you know, how you came up with, putting that documentary together.
So that's the funniest story, probably, only trumped by Kim's,
it all happened in Antarctica.
2x4 to the back of my head. But it's important to acknowledge that film was shot the day after Kim delivered her wake up call to my life.
A lot of boom.
So the cool thing about that film is part of the rawness that you saw was I was encountering this moment of self-reflection where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to lay it out there. But here's the funniest backstory on the film. I didn't know it was a film. I didn't even know it was being made into a film. I got a call in the summer of 2015. So this is 5 months after the Antarctic trip, that the film had won the Sydney Independent Film Festival Best Picture.
Wow.
And I said, what film?
Because he was just being interviewed.
I was just being interviewed. I thought it was going into some stock footage that was going to show up in something else. I had no idea that my film was actually me in a film. Like, I didn't know that, which was actually kind of funny because our first date, by the way, was at the movie premiere.
Around
like that week, that was
around
pretty cool.
Time.
So that was kind of cool too. Well, it was actually more cool probably than the premiere, but what we were doing in the film was we were actually having this conversation, which was, you can't help when you are in, and you guys know this. I mean, north of the border, you guys have amazing, like, big spaces and vistas and stuff like that. You're not caged. Most of you aren't caged in, urban packed cities. But like I tell people about Canada, the Northwest Territories and Yukon, if you've never been, you have to go, because your heart can't not be open, because it's so big. It's so vast. The mountains are like endless, and the forests go forever, and the animals are huge, and everything is just like raw and naked and huge and amazing, and it's just beautiful. And Antarctica is like that, right? I've been to both, north and south, but Antarctica is this dynamic, like every time you turn, you see this thing like whales and then ice, calving off glaciers and like the most amazing things. So you see all of this stuff. And so it opens up a heart space where you just sit there going, everything is breathtaking. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And so you can't live in that space without taking a step back and saying, well, hold on a minute. Every story we tell about, nature's falling apart and the world's ending and the, sky's falling. And you sit there going, I just saw, no kidding, 4:00 every morning, I saw humpback whales doing yoga with me for 45 minutes. No kidding. Like, I do downward facing dog on the deck, and they would actually crest and bend and hold. And then when I do my next pose, they would move. Like, humpback whales doing freaking yoga with me at 4:00 in the morning. Somebody tells me that the world's broken. I tell them that their perspective is broken, because what happens is that when you dance with nature, and I mean that in whatever scale it is. I mean, not everybody gets to do humpback whale yoga, but like cool people do, like cool people like me do. But seriously, I mean, we all have the moment where we can allow ourselves to live in the dance of nature and live in the dance of the wonder of being alive and being connected and all that kind of stuff. And so what happened in that film was that's the vibe. Like, you couldn't not be open-hearted. You could not be thinking, the problem is the stories that we're telling. We're telling ourselves the stories that enslave us. And then we're going, I wonder why I feel enslaved. Newsflash, you feel enslaved because you're enslaving yourself. And the minute you see yourself in that vulnerability, you realize, oh, hold on a second, I can start taking back some of my sovereignty. I can start taking back some of the control of my life. And you know what you can do? Freaking do yoga. And maybe it's a squirrel in your backyard. I don't care. Like, look at the freaking woodpecker, do whatever. I don't care what it is, but get back in tune with the dance of the universe, with your life. And then all of a sudden, you start going, oh, the stories we're being told about broken and separation and conflict, those are stories that are serving a manipulation of reality. They're not serving reality.
And also, you know, and I think this sort of leads into that piece in your film as well, where you were talking about the presence of God and being able to see the man in the limousine and the man sitting on the street begging for money. Talk a little bit about that aspect too. Like, you know, being able to see both sides of that equation.
Yeah, and you know, Kim and I have had a beautiful journey. Like we grew up in very, very, very different worlds. Mine was highly religious. Kim spent one day as a little girl going to Sunday school and realizing
I wanted to see what it was like.
People weren't nice, and she never went back. So we have about as far apart in terms of our religious underpinnings as you can get. But, you know, I think that many of us get caught up in a proper noun view of religion or faith or dogma or whatever. We kind of get trapped in this story of the divinity that becomes wrapped in the cellophane wrapping that we put around a brand or a label or something else. And what I wanted to do in the film was open up the aperture of that and say that even in our religious texts, you know, our story of God is bigger than the words that we have, right? Every single thing we have diminishes the full capacity and potential. And so in the film, I talk about that scene in India where Anil Gupta was so kind to point out that his reflection of what it meant to have divinity in the world was the notion that by the capacity to perceive not only what's around you, in this case, the rich person and the poor person, but the capacity to know you can do something about it. Like, that's the divinity. The divinity is the spark within you that says, oh, hold on a minute. I have the perception, I have the awareness, I have the understanding, and I have an activation within me that says, get off your butt and do something. And I think that that's the piece that most of us, when we get caught up in the postmodern spiritual movement, we miss the fact that divinity is not perception. It's not getting, you know, tripped out on a meditation that takes you into some other ephemeral zone, which is the bullshit transcendental nonsense that people talk about, which is, oh, just transcend the human experience. No, get in the messiness of the human experience. Be raw, be authentic, be you, because divinity crafted you to be the ninja, the warrior, the whatever you are. Like, that's what divinity called for. And so what I love is, and we've laughed about some of the responses we've gotten. I mean, Kim's idea of doing butterfly was awesome. I would not have done it. She did it. So you can thank her. But, you know, within 2 months, maybe, we were getting prayers from every faith on the globe. Like, we got Hindus praying for us. We got Baptists praying for us. We got Catholics praying for us. We got Muslims praying for us. We got people praying for us. We got more prayers than you could count, which I said, you know, okay, that's awesome. And then we had here in the US, we had like private militias and Second Amendment freaks who said, if anybody comes and messes with you, call us and we'll be there and we'll bring our militia and our posse. And I looked at the whole experience and I thought, what a blessing. Like, every single person who was reaching out and responding was activating their divinity. They were saying, I see you guys. I love what you're doing. And I'm going to let you know in my own way. And some of the ways were pretty weird. I'm just saying, we got some pretty weird. Yeah, we got some pretty weird offers, but it kind of doesn't matter, because what was it? It was the human spirit, the divinity within that activate and said, we love what you're doing. We love that you're standing up. We want to stand with you. We might not know how, so we're going to do it the way we can. And I'll tell you what, for whatever reason, maple syrup
keeps arriving.
Honey, some interesting artwork.
Yeah, artwork. A lot of maple syrup.
A lot of maple syrup. I don't know what it is.
It fuels
but
us.
We got a lot of maple syrup.
From the Canadians?
Who really, really love what we're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we love maple syrup, so that's great.
Yeah. I was going to say from the Canadians. Yep, I'm sure.
Yeah, we got some Canadian maple syrup. We got some Vermont maple syrup. We got some New York upstate maple syrup.
You name it. We have the syrup.
We've got the syrup. And I make a mean gluten-free waffle, people. So
perfect.
Well, we're gonna test you on that someday.
There you go.
Yeah.
We are. And we'll bring the maple syrup.
Okay.
There you go.
There
should be plenty of maple syrup to go around.
Absolutely.
So did you want to say anything about the God divinity thing, since it's a totally kind of different world for you? Because for you, this whole experience has moved you from being very confronted by it to actually, you've had some amazing, like, personal conversations with people.
Yeah, like a lot of people say, tell the difference between Australia and America. And, I've only been here 2.5 years. And, just a lot of the overt religion and the word God here and there. And, not here and there, a lot. And, people just talking about it in general speeches and stuff. And it's just not a thing that's overtly said in Australia. It's like, I think it's religion, politics, and money are just a no-go zone to have conversations about, so people don't have these conflicts. And at first it was like, it was just unusual, and I kind of sat with it, and I thought, well, it's just, no different from, like I say, I ask the universe, or I kind of ask my higher self for wisdom, and people just have different terms for accessing higher knowledge. And as long as you know that, well, I feel, you're part of this one whole, and there's nothing out there that's more powerful than you. You're part of it. So, and to have, I think it's really important now to have a feeling of a security system, whatever works for you. It can make all of this a whole lot easier.
But you've actually fallen into, like, the other night when you were out with the girls.
Oh, a friend was doing
that's
a grace.
Pretty amazing.
And she was doing it secretly because she didn't want to, not that I've ever said anything, but she just did it and she didn't want to say much. I said, I see you secretly doing grace. I said, let me have a turn of that. So I said one and held all their hands, and they said that is the funniest grace that they have ever heard, and we all giggled and stuff. And
but I mean, you've been dropping into like accessing a different thing for you.
Yeah, and make them feel comfortable.
Yeah. And it's opening up a whole nother dimension of relationship. So it's really cool. I mean, it's
accepting of everyone's thing, and it's all good.
And it's like you say in Future Dreaming too, which it really put it into perspective for me. It was that beach ball reference, right? Depending on where you're looking in from, it's all the same ball. You're just looking at a different color from somewhere.
There's another Hebrew traditional oral story that didn't make it into the film, but it's actually one of my favorite ones that kind of is the companion to the beach ball story. And that's the story which is told by a bunch of rabbis that I have encountered who talk about this visit where God shows up at the house of a wealthy man. And so the wealthy man, goes around busting himself to make sure all the dust bunnies are vacuumed up and gets all the dishes in order and cleans the kids and, presents this very, very elaborate, everything's great story because God's showing up at his house. So God shows up and God kind of goes around going, oh, lovely house and all this kind of stuff. And so God walks the guy over to the window and he says, look out, and what do you see? And he sees the widow crossing the road with her child and says, oh, I see the unfortunate widow crossing the road with her child. And then he sees the beggar on the street and he says, oh, I see the unfortunate beggar on the street. And he sees the greengrocer who's struggling to make a living. And so God's just listening to this person kind of rattle off all of the unfortunate that he sees. And then God takes the same guy and stands him in front of a mirror and says, now what do you see? And the guy goes, oh, I see this guy who's been very blessed. And I see this guy who's, his life has been great and it's wonderful and God has blessed his life and blah, 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 blah. And then God looks at the wealthy man and smiles and he says, how tragic, how blind we get when we put silver behind the window.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about that, the wisdom of that story is that I think one of the things that we've celebrated through the entirety of our journey, which in many respects for us, future dreaming is an artifact of the life arc of us because it's as old as us. The film is the us film. But I think having that as a constant reminder, that film is a constant reminder to say, that's the humanity that was the authentic experience of what happened when our planets collided. Like when our energies came together, future dreaming was the byproduct. And if we can go back and we can look at that and say, okay, when we're not syncing up, like how important is it inside of the coupleness of what we are to be able to go, that's the best of us. So why don't we actually make sure we're living the best of us?
Nice.
So it's we're kind of lucky that way. I recommend everybody needs to do a feature film.
We'll get on that.
With their partner of destiny and,
Save the world.
Kim's cameo appearance of her hair in the Zodiac boat.
Yeah.
I just love that you guys can recognize that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can be in that moment and just recognize that and then bring that frequency back.
Yeah.
When, in the present moment, now.
Oh, I do that.
that.
You know what? I listened to the first strains of the music at the beginning of the film and I tear up every single time I listen.
Love it.
I think it's. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Alicia.
go ahead.
No.
I was going to say the fact that you can just be open and admit that you tear up, it's, I look at what we're going through right now and you look at the human condition and people are so fear driven.
Yeah.
So many people will not stand in their own fear of what people will say about them, the accostation, what will happen with their job or their family members. And when I watched your documentary, Future Dreaming, and I know you touched a little bit about this, but there was one sentence that just brought tears to my eyes, and it made me weep, which was, the divine only lets you see what you can do something about.
Yes.
And it just it struck a chord in me because I feel like all of us here, when this happened last year, it was like a light bulb, like a switch, something's not right. And it kind of in my mind makes me always wonder, what's different about the ones who were very hyper aware of this right away versus those who are still kind of asleep?
Well, that's that's a tough one. I answer that in such a politically incorrect way. It's not even funny. But I don't care. It's Friday evening. I'm going to be politically incorrect. When you walk around your neighborhood and you look at, somebody with a giant Wolfenbüttel dog who's 120 pounds like ours, and he looks like a bear. And then you see like somebody else with a little schnauzer that's maybe 10 pounds. And then you see somebody with a, trending, pug or something else that's maybe 3 pounds or 4 pounds. We will very comfortably go, oh, well, those are dogs. And we won't in our brain not see that there are distinctions between the giant Wolfenbüttel and then, the schnauzer and then the pug. I think we've made a mistake. And I talk about this in the film, and I know people get upset about it, but I actually don't care. We've had 800 years on this planet where the Occidental communities, and I mean European extraction, we have hybridized humanity. We've killed off the people who actually stand up to authority. We've killed off the people who are spiritual. We've killed off the people who are outspoken. And not surprisingly, The majority of people who procreate are people who have been cowed into submission. I mean, listen, go back 300 years. 300 years. That's not that long ago. We were burning people in public executions. We were beheading people. We were hanging, the First Nations peoples in both sides of, the Canada-US border. Like in the War of 1812 to 1815, both Canada and the US did egregious things in public. We watched people's houses burn, churches burn, villages burn. Those messages and the biologic effect have hybridized a number of people to a point where they actually have a genetic or epigenetic fear that is in fact incapable of waking because they are actually bred to submit. And we have a hard time acknowledging that we did it to ourselves. As a human race, we sat idly by while we decided. And remember, and I pointed this out in my speech in California a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people got upset about it. But in 1914, in the United States, at Cold Spring Harbor Labs, we set up a eugenics research laboratory to get rid of people who were, in fact, socially not desirable. Now, if you build a federally sponsored system, which is specifically aimed at getting rid of people who do not conform, is it any wonder that we would breed a society of conformists? And I think, what is a conversation like tonight? Conversation like tonight is the celebration of the wild type. Like we are the freaking, mutants that we're the ones that didn't bend the knee.
The recessive gene.
And you know what? That's awesome because that tells us that humanity still has a chance, that we haven't all turned into the bland, tasteless tomato that looks beautiful on the outside but tastes like freaking cardboard on the inside. Like, I want the spice of this life. I do not want the made for the supermarket shelf version of life. I want the raw, authentic, give it to me is as absolutely raw as you can get, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
But that's not everybody's journey. And one of the things we had to get to, and it was not easy because we're both empathetic people, is sometimes realize,
people are on
you've
journey.
done your part. People are on their journey. They incarnated for their spiritual journey, their life journey, and their failure to respond is not an indictment of your passion,
Trying to help.
your empathy, and your heart. They are on a journey, and sometimes you have to acknowledge that that journey doesn't make sense to you, but it is their journey.
Yeah.
David, we've had a few questions coming in with regards to the farmlands and stuff, and so I'm gonna bounce to a couple of different, because I think Amanda actually had some questions that came in prior to the questions here. But as you know, Bill Gates owns 2/3 of the American farmland, and this will probably expand over time. What do you think of where this is going, and what needs to be done to stop this guy?
So the second part of the question is we collectively as a society need to stop reverencing people who are only iconic because of their hoarded wealth. The minute we stop putting the notion that a multi-billionaire has more value than, the guy who's, fixing your car at the corner station, like, we're the problem. If we stopped building the illusion that a Bill Gates has something that puts him in a special category, if we actually acknowledge that he's a sociopathic, desperate man who is seeking nothing but validation, and there's never going to be enough, we would actually not have the problem we have. So it's incumbent on us to stop giving a rip about Bill Gates, because the minute his ego takes the hit, and all that does is just go, hey, you know what? We're done caring. We're done caring about anybody who thinks that their credential is based on their hoarded wealth. That's a bad model. It's broken, and we need to get rid of it. And we have to do it. Like, we have to stop pretending like, oh my gosh, I'd love to meet, Warren Buffett. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. What you'd love to meet is a person who actually has an authentic life. You don't want to meet somebody who's preyed on the rest of civilization and taken from the rest of civilization. Stop celebrating it, and he goes away. So that part's the thing. Now, remember, and I've pointed this out many, many, many times. If you go back in history, 1929 we were told that 1929 was the Great Depression. That's a BS story. That's not what really happened. There was, in fact, a market collapse in October of 1929. That's a true statement. But what really happened was a bunch of people, and listen carefully to what I'm saying. This is super important, people. There was a climate change narrative called the Dust Bowl. There was a stock market narrative called the hijacking of banking to take over the private sector interest in financial services. And are you ready for this? A public health emergency. Does that sound familiar at all?
Shocker.
Now, here's the funny thing. It took 6 years for us to get through the Dust Bowl. At the end of the Dust Bowl, we had industrial agriculture, and we had to get to industrial agriculture so that we could get industrial chemical pharmaceutical treatment to our agro business. Before that, agriculture was spreading shit on the fields, planting seeds, and actually having crops grow. After that, it was using hydrocarbons, it was using industrial fertilizers, and it was mass producing terrible food at industrial scale across all of the United States and all of Canada. And the Dust Bowl wasn't an environmental crisis. It was an economic land grab that looks exactly what Bill Gates is doing. What do we need to do? We need to call out companies like Cargill. We need to call out companies like Monsanto. We need to call out companies like Bayer. We need to call out companies and do what we did decades ago with companies like Nestle or De Beers. Most of you don't remember those things, but you should, because when Nestle decided that mother's breast milk was less desirable than infant formula, it wasn't until mothers said, screw you, and went back to breastfeeding that we actually got Nestle to back off of harming millions of kids all over the world by giving them shit nutrition in the name of industrial food. We need to be sophisticated and recognize that the tools that we use to change corporate behavior then we need to use again. If it comes from Cargill, do not buy it. If it comes from Monsanto, do not buy it. Right? These are simple things. And listen, that means that maybe we have to pay more at the farmer's market. Great. Guess what? Pay more at the farmer's market. You know why? You'll eat more healthily, A. B, the food will actually taste like food. There's a bad idea. And guess what? You'll support the businesses that stand in the way of the industrial agriculture complex. Listen, these are all things that we can do. And it means stopping with the nonsense of saying, oh, I don't know why this world is falling apart. Yes, you do. When you buy the piece of crap vegetable, when you buy the processed food, when you buy all the crap that goes through your mass-produced, whatever your supermarket chain is, you are the problem. You can stop being the problem by making sure that your local farmer, your local butcher, your local feed, whatever I don't care what you are, freaking be the solution. Because the moment you are the solution, guess what? The Bill Gateses of the world crawl back under the rocks they came from, and we get rid of them.
Awesome.
I love that you're saying that, only because where I am here in Ontario, we've actually have a whole group of us now that's collectively coming together to see how we can help the farmers firsthand, because I agree.
Yep.
There's so many people that are like, oh, I absolutely want to boycott them, but yet I just got a membership at Costco because it's saving me a couple of bucks. But you're the same one that's not choosing to be a part of the solution.
That's
when
exactly right.
Perfect.
Burn your Costco card. You want to
Yes.
know how to help save the world? Burn your Costco card. They
That's
were
a
the
start.
first ones to dump masks on us. They should be the last ones to get your dollar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Gates is
that.
in there too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I
right.
agree. It really just comes down to, supporting our organic means. And I love that you brought up that concept of the breast milk, because I feel like we're in a similar fight right now where
Of course.
people are starting to get back into, in touch with their natural instincts. And this is something that was needed. It's actually kind of good that COVID came out and brought that out, because people were living like, out of their natural instincts. It wasn't happening anymore. They were eating so much processed foods. They're absorbing so much processed products and media and everything around us. And this is really just kind of like peeling the onion back and really making it so that you're seeing everything so clearly,
Everything.
so that we can restructure what was already corrupted and everything that's happening.
Yeah. It's not just COVID rubbish. It's
So-
a ton of stuff that's being
Oh
transparent
God,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
and so the question that's on the screen right now, I love this question because the answer is we are in the better timeline right now.
Amen.
I mean,
Amen.
we are in the better timeline. Let's face it.
It's been an illusion up until now.
We have, we've gone on a journey, but it hasn't been a very long one, of recognizing that we didn't lose a single friend in the last 18 months. We stopped propping up the illusion of friends that weren't.
Mm.
I think
And-
your story on that is like the best, because you've actually had to face the get real with
Yeah,
get
just
real
because
with
someone's
friendships.
a friend for 20 years doesn't give them, an ability to be, not a friend. And it helped me get really, really real on a lot of friendships and just call it out. And then it allowed space for actually real friendships. And I've got closer friendships now than I ever have. People that you meet, not even for for a short amount of time, who you feel you could share anything with, because this is also a time where everyone has been forced to get real and transparent. So you're not holding anything back because you're real and vulnerable, and the times are calling for it. So you don't have the layers of protection or anything that you need to prop up. You can just be yourself, and they can be themselves. And there's a lot of opportunity for real connections now.
Well, and I'm going to tell you, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for relationships getting real. Like Kim and I, over the last, it was weird because like pre-COVID, October, November, pre-COVID, we kind of had to get real about whether we were going to make our relationship as perfect as it could be. Like, we've got a good relationship, no question. But then it was, are we ready to go to the next level? Like, cut the shit that isn't ours, get rid of it, like, get really real. And one of the things that happened when we were forced into, like, we're close and, we have a big house, but not big enough to, totally escape. Like when we had to get really real, we got to a place, and both of us got there, where we would actually go, you know what? This isn't our best. And we deserve from each other, and we deserve within ourselves our best. And what happened was we actually got there. We did. We actually got to a place where I can honestly say that some of our best moments of last year were some of what anybody observing would have said were our worst moments. Because it looked like something went from 0 to 60 about conflict or something like that. But what was really happening was we were cutting through the crap that used to be the dance that you could get away from, because you would be traveling for a week, or you'd be gone and you'd be doing this, or you'd be doing that. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're going to deal with this shit now. And that's when it's going to happen now. And guess what? What a beautiful thing to actually get to a place where you know that your relationships have the integrity of surviving those raw, sometimes very painful, but raw moments where you just go, you know what? We are worth more than putting up with a half-hearted version of what's possible. So I'm a huge advocate for saying these are the best of our times. And I'm living proof of it. We're living proof of it. This is the best of our times.
I agree. We are living in a better world right now. I, similar to you, Kim, lost a friendship of over 30 years. Yet, ironically, I didn't feel like I lost. I only felt like I gained because of how much I was connecting with people that were on my level. So I felt like this is the greatest awakening. It's a spiritual war, but it's so beautiful because as scary as it is, I always say, but it's so beautiful because it's real now. You see everyone's true colors. There's no masking it. And it's great because it also shows their desperation from trying to censor people and causing this divide that it doesn't even matter anymore because the people that are seeing it so clearly, there's no masking it anymore. It's just, it's super raw and it is beautiful. So
Yeah.
It's the silver linings. It's absolutely the silver linings in all of it, you know, and have to get through the shitstorm before you're able to find, you know, the rainbow on the other side. And, you know, we've said it over and over again, but this panel of ladies are absolutely one of my biggest silver linings, I think, for each other. We've just, you know, we haven't met Amanda and Tanya yet face to face, and they're going to come and join us over here in Vancouver here soon. But it's just, you know, like these relationships, they fill the void of light friendships, just like you, friendships.
They transcend a time and a space, right?
So what we'll do is we'll get in a kayak on Friday Harbor.
Yes.
We'll kayak out in the Pacific. We'll find a pod of orca. We'll come into Vancouver and see.
You have to.
Perfect.
We would love it. Yeah,
July
we would love
3rd.
it.
Canada Day.
Yeah.
You can come to the Love and Light Music Festival we're throwing.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Music festival.
Yep.
That would be a bad one for you.
Yep. I sent you that one video to watch. They're coming on Canada Rising Up, and they're phenomenal. Philippe and Ty, they're just unreal. And they pass on their hellos.
The two men standing up right now. They're a perfect example of men that are actually true men. And we actually met Ty, one of the founders, because he made a video that pretty much went viral that was like, where are the men at? Where are the real men at right now? And it was just raw and it was out there. And I felt like all of the alpha females just resonated with that, you know, and we had to share that. So it was fantastic. But get on your canoe. We expect you to see you on Canada.
We're expecting you.
We'll get there at Christmas. Lucky we're fit.
Yeah. Danny, you have any more questions?
Well, you know, there was a couple of just easy ones that were further up. Somebody had mentioned, like, where's your favorite place to be? Like, you've obviously been all over the world. Where's been your favorite place?
You want to take a stab and then I will? Because I got 5.
What? You got 5?
I got 5 favorite places.
I have to say, an easy one for me is a place in Australia called Byron Bay.
That's not even close. In fact, half of what she's wearing
is from Byron
Bay right now.
And I haven't been back for two and a bit years, so I'm kind of missing Australia, but especially miss there. It's lovely.
There are more healers, therapists,
beaches,
people,
best clothes, jewelry.
There are probably more crystal reading healers in Byron Bay than there are people in Byron Bay because several of them have multiple personalities.
Yeah.
I believe Byron Bay.
And it's on the beach, so that's
Did Byron Bay not win something against having 5G there? I think Byron Bay was able to eliminate 5G within there as well, right?
They're pretty powerful with
it's a force there.
They're really, really, really
stopped,
powerful.
Shops that are like the chain stores being there. They're pretty good that way.
Yeah, Byron Bay is pretty legit. It's a cool spot.
Maldives is up there, which we went for our honeymoon. Like, I don't think anyone would not want to go there.
Yeah,
that's pretty great. And South Africa and Antarctica. Yeah, that's my top.
Yeah, Antarctica. I love this. I love the warm weather myself, but when I saw all the imagery from that video, I was like, okay, that's
thing. My naked jump into the ocean.
Everyone
at -2 degrees Celsius.
Polar plunges.
I was in the pool.
That was
it was brave.
So I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. Wherever I am with Kim is my favorite place right now.
Yeah, but you have to say Papua New Guinea. That's
well, I'm saying that, like, I'm really into being where we are, so that's cool.
Well,
I get that.
That I like.
Yeah, although Kim says that she didn't watch when I jumped naked into the Antarctic Sea, but that's not
Do you want to
entirely
hear something
true.
weird? When he jumped in, I had this thing it popped into my head, said I'm going to marry that guy, and I turned my head and didn't watch him naked because I said I'm going to see that later.
I
That-
love it. That's amazing.
Probably wasn't good
Beautiful.
to view in the minus.
There wasn't much to view. It was -2. You're not seeing
Probably a
much.
good idea.
There was nothing. Yeah. There was nothing going on.
2x rated.
Yeah, you couldn't have.
Oh,
created
too
that one.
funny.
So what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, places. I love Papua New Guinea. My heart is in Papua New Guinea all the time.
He's done so much humanitarian work there.
I have
Saved lives, thousands.
like I've
of
just
lives.
done stuff
Wow.
there that is
The mining companies that were stealing the land and literally doing genocide, and it's not reported anywhere, not even in
Yeah.
Australia, because the Australian government can be very corrupt, and they were
part of it.
part of it. So David has stopped civil war over there and done
Yeah.
a billion things.
Yeah, so
Wow.
Papua New Guinea
Wow.
is a like my that's part of my soul.
Beautiful people there.
I love parts of Australia, but I had a very interesting experience with Australia in that when I was an outsider coming over, I was very welcomed, and then when I was over there living, I was very unwelcome. So it was a really weird, like for me, just a very odd experience because I love Australia, but it was actually a really interesting
They
challenge.
couldn't understand why a big fish would want to come back to a little pond, because usually in
Yeah.
Australia, if you're successful, you go to America. And David was bringing all these amazing technologies and help and wisdom and all sorts of things, and it was feared.
It was very feared in
They
Australia.
didn't have
It
the
was not-
concept of someone would be there just to help, and he's going,
Yeah.
well, my wife's here, and that apparently wasn't a good enough reason as to why he would be there.
Yeah, and I would be like, "Have you seen my wife?" No. So Australia is really dear. I mean, I loved getting out to Western Australia. I've done a lot of work with the Aboriginal communities in Western Australia. Freaking love it. It's beautiful. And we had a great time in Sydney and in Queensland. And then our experience in the Melbourne, Victoria area was
Melbourne was
pretty
not good.
shocking. So it's a mixed bag there, but Australia is, forever in our hearts and in my heart, definitely. I would say the Gobi Desert in Mongolia is probably one of those wonderful, mysterious places that I never expected to ever even be. But then being there and seeing the complex beauty of the Gobi Desert, which none of us talk about, none of us know about, the glaciers, the mountains, these beautiful oases, it's a stunning place to be. So that's a pretty special place for me. Some really cool energy there. A Buddhist monastery run by women in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, which is where I was able to take a week in the summer of 2015 to realize that I probably could actually fall in love with this beautiful woman sitting next to me. That place probably in a week's time seared itself into my soul in a way that I'll never be able to ever do it justice. And the women who run the monastery there are just phenomenal. Really cool. So that was cool. I love Peru. I've always connected with Peru. I've always connected with South Africa. I've always connected with Egypt. Love Egypt. I love Bled, Slovenia. If you ever want to travel to Europe, ditch all of the Lonely Planet, buy freaking prepackaged tour nonsense and go to Slovenia because number one, it's freaking gorgeous. It's like a miniature of Austria and Switzerland all in a day's drive. So it's freaking amazing. You live, if you go to a place like Piran, which is right on the Adriatic, you can rent a Roman castle for like $50 a night, and you can sleep in a wall of a castle city that was built, 1,400 years ago, and you've got running water that's still coming from a freaking aqueduct. Like, how badass is that?
Wow.
That's cool. You know what? Here's the thing, though. I'll tell you what. As I'm thinking about it, it is the people. It's not the places. Like, for me, I love hanging out with interesting people. And I have a world of interesting people that I hang out with. So some of the places where I've hung out with kind of interesting people are pretty shit places, but I like the people. So
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
yeah.
Fun.
We like you guys. We would like to hang out with you guys. So
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Oh, God, yeah, I've only been to Canada for 2 days in my life, so I would love to come
Oh.
back.
Yeah.
Well, you can
You
come
need
stay
to
at my
come back.
farm.
Yeah, like it was lovely, my brief 2 days.
Nah, but we could take you some interesting
Yeah.
places.
I'd
Oh
love
yeah.
that. Yeah.
I want to take you back to when you were talking a little bit about relationship, because I think, there's sort of two segments here, and give me a second while I bring them together. You were talking about the relationship piece of things where, it's these relationships fall apart. And, it's always when you're looking at somebody and you're pointing the blame at somebody, there's one finger pointing out, but there's always 3 pointing back in.
Yeah.
Well, my husband and I have done a lot of soul work. And one of the things that I really had to come to the table with was, what's my taking?
Yeah.
It's easy to look at somebody else and to place the blame for all of the things that may have, been the bumpy road in your relationship. But what's my taking in it?
Yeah.
And one of the things that was in your documentary, coming to the other second part of the path, was when you were talking about the work of charity and how, charity is just a sorry excuse of all the screw ups that we've done in humanity over the years. And it's this sad attempt to try and fix these, relationships. And so these connections that we have, I just want to say that I think first off, it has to start at home.
Yeah.
How are you with your children? How do you speak to your parents? How are you with your spouse? And I think that if we can change how we are in our home, it's one start, and of looking inside of what's your taking in it. It's so easy to point the finger at somebody else. And so whether that's in your work or in your home, all of those places in your life, those are just starting points. But David, can you just talk a little bit more about that charity piece? Because I really haven't given it much justice in the way that you explained it in the video.
No, so Kim and I teach a process called integral accounting, which is really important because what it does is it looks at the all-in consequence of our activities, not just the window dressing kind of what we think we see, but what is the all-in cost? What is the all-in consequence of what we do? And most of us willfully choose a path of ignorance so that we don't have to deal with the unconsidered cost. And we'll use 2 examples. When we think of a cell phone, I've said very, very controversially to a lot of audiences, if the only ringtone you had was the sound of young men raping young women in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and that was your only ringtone, if you heard what actually happened, where the metals were being mined, you wouldn't use a cell phone. The reason why you do use a cell phone is because that has conveniently been sterilized and it's so far away that you can't hear the gunfire and you can't hear the cries of the people who are dying. Having been in conflict metal regions and lived the experience of hearing gunfire and hearing the sounds of women being raped and hearing all that kind of stuff in real life, I have a very different relationship with my cell phone than anybody who just goes, oh, I went to the AT&T store, I went to the Sprint store and I got my phone, because I hear the cost of the thing. Mm-hmm. Now, I hasten to add that I use a cell phone. Okay. So this is not a rant against technology. What it is, though, is that I realized early on in my life, I had something I could bring to the table. And that meant that I needed to ground in reality the unseen costs of the unconsidered consumption that we engage in. And you're exactly right, Danielle, because when we think about the unconsidered consumption, that includes what we take from relationships. That includes what we take from interactions with other people. We get so callous when we consume, like the entire energy has to be flowing one direction, that we fail to consider the cost that is taking from other people, other places, other things. And we sterilize it by saying, well, we're not going to even pay attention, right? London is where copper gets traded. So when I was dealing with genocide at copper mines, I reached out to the London Serious Fraud Office of the London Stock Exchange. And they told me that the genocide issue was too far away to investigate. Now, think about what I just said. They sell the copper from the place, but they can't investigate the humanity that is being abused at the exact same place. What is the message that's happening there, people? The message is that we would rather have the sterilized convenience of ignorance rather than the accountability that says, you know what? Maybe I can't do anything about the violence and the rape in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but if I'm using a cell phone, what am I doing to deal with physical abuse or sexual abuse in my town? I'm not saying go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I'm not saying don't use a cell phone. Now you're using a cell phone. But what I am saying is that if we don't give ourselves permission to be reminded of the cost of what we do, and then take the next step and say, hold on a minute, I'm not going to go to DRC. I'm not going to deal with that situation, but there is a crisis center in my town. There is a place where I know that kids who have had abuse are being, helped or whatever else. Freaking get off your butt and do something, because here's the problem. The problem is we don't solve the problem by lamenting and wallowing in the crisis. That's BS. And everybody who jumps on the bandwagon and go, well, I'm just not going to use a cell phone if there's conflict metals. Bullshit. Then you're dishonoring the whole thing. What I'm saying is very simple. If you know that there was a cost for the thing that you're experiencing, then engage in the cost in real time. Don't put it off. Don't wait for your wealthiness so that you can give somebody a charity to go raise money for the whatever. Get off your butt, be human, be engaged. And if we did that, we wouldn't have charity, because we'd be taking care of the problems as they emerge. And could we all go to Democratic Republic of Congo? Can we all deal with conflict metals? No. But how many young men and women would be helped if every conscious cell phone user realized that their cell phone conflict metals was an invitation to give a shit about somebody in their neighborhood who was suffering from abuse or neglect or something else? We don't have to make it too hard, and we pretend like we do. We pretend like, well, we can't do anything about the Congo, so we're going to just forget about it. No, there is somebody in your neighborhood who needs you now. Get involved, because if you get involved now, you will solve the Democratic Republic of Congo issue by doing something in Ottawa or in Ontario or Vancouver or wherever else you are. You will be a part of a solution. And listen, this isn't an ephemeral game. This is a karmic energy reality. If we neglect the weakest link that we choose to anonymize, that will flow back to us. It will. And it may not in this experience, and it may not in a particular way, but I will guarantee you that if we choose to neglect for convenience or ignorance or callousness or carelessness, if we choose to neglect, it flows back.
And tenfold. And it's like, you've seen that, I don't know, that meme where it's about, Gates, and where he's offering this child who is starving and potbelly, and all this child needs is food and water. But our philanthropist Gates has got the VAX, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, really, where has our humanity come from? It's like, it's not what the child needs.
No.
And so it brings it to that simplicity of, can we just have some common sense around this, where people are thinking this guy is the philanthropist that he is because he's donated millions, trillions, billions, wherever he's done to helping people in Africa or India or China, and with his
Genocide.
VAX, and it's like, you know, what happened to a sandwich? What happened to nutrients and fruit and vegetables and running water? Like, that's what's needed here. And we've got to come back to that simplicity.
I mean, this for me is not a soapbox. It's been my life. I mean, I have built more houses for more homeless than any other person I know, and not paid for them, built them, like these hands. The reason why I have this little artifact hanging behind Kim's head, which I'll pull out so you can see.
What is it?
This is a beautiful story. That's a plumb line. A lot of people don't know what a plumb line is, but it turns out that if you want to build a building and you want to make the building not fall over, you need to make sure that the lines are straight, and particularly the cornerstones are set. Well, it turns out that after Hurricane Mitch in Honduras many years ago, I was one of the first people to go down and start rebuilding the towns that had been destroyed by the hurricane. And at the end of the week that was our first response week, a guy gave me 1/3 of his business, his plumb line. He had a plumb line, he had a hammer, and he had a trowel, a masonry trowel. He gave me this because I showed him how to make water levels so that everybody could level the blocks to go into the building of the houses. And he didn't need this anymore because I showed him how to make a water level with surgical tubing and a bunch of other stuff. And we made thousands of water levels, and he gave me this because he thought the water levels were cooler. I think that plumb line is the coolest thing. What's the point of it? This guy, who was the only survivor in his village, worked together with me, and we realized that for us to transform the experience of humanity, we didn't have to just build houses. We had to equip people with the ability to build houses. And so, yes, did I build a shitload of houses? Yep, I did. And what I also did was I actually worked with a community so that there were even more thousands of houses that could be built. And the one thing that stood in the way of that happening was we didn't have enough of these things. But it turns out that after hurricanes, there's a bunch of plastic waste all over the place. And so what we did was we spent a whole day making water levels so that we could actually square up the houses. And the town of La Esperanza in Honduras is built courtesy of my shit bubble levels that were what I left behind to build a village that was destroyed by the hurricane. Now, what's the point of that story? The point of the story is philanthropy. You can't launder your way back to your soul, right? If you don't have scraped hands and, concrete burns and, whatever it is, or you're the nurse and you got boogers on you, or you're whatever you are, like if you haven't met the analog humanity and gotten real with that analog humanity, no part of charity will ever work, because you cannot transact your soul. You have to live it.
Nice.
Teach a man to fish.
That's a good saying.
That's a soapbox. Is that a soapbox?
That's good.
Hey, I see the question there. Are patented seeds from nature? The answer is a tiny technical little thing in patent law. And since the question is there, I will honor the question. So there is a plant variety patent that you can get. And what that plant variety patent is that if you have hybridized a plant over a period of time, and after, usually in most patent situations, if you have shown that the features that you have made reproduce over 7 generations or more, then you can file a patent on the hybrid seed. Okay? Now, this question is an interesting one, because when Rachel asked the question, she probably didn't know how deep we were going to go with this, but Monsanto, Pioneer, Hybrid, a bunch of other people decided to mess around with that law And what they decided to do is they decided to genetically modify seeds with a bacterium. And the bacterium was Bacillus thuringiensis, or BT. So you've heard of BT cotton, BT soybeans, BT corn, BT other things. And by the way, most of the people who are listening to this who have encountered a nutritional advocacy for getting into plant-based nutrition need to be very aware of this, because it turns out that Bacillus thuringiensis has been approved by organic certified growers as an acceptable thing to put on organically certified crops. But as I say in my book, Lizards Eat Butterflies, there's a tiny problem. The tiny problem is that Bacillus thuringiensis was known by the Japanese in the early 1900s to create leaky gut. And it turns out that an enormous number of people who think they are eating healthy by eating plant-based nutrition wind up having worse gastrointestinal problems, because the organic certification bodies in North America and in Europe allow crops to be exposed to Bacillus thuringiensis. And it turns out that we're killing ourselves by eating healthier. So you need to be really clear on the fact that the modification of seeds using the transgenic property of the bacteria modification, which is the Bacillus thuringiensis modification, is not only a harmful thing, it's actually probably killing an enormous number of people in slow motion. And the saddest part about it is a lot of the people who are being killed in slow motion are people who think they're making health conscious decisions.
Wow. Wow. Rachel has one more big question, so it's going to take me a while to read it if you're okay with this.
Okay, go for it. I like big questions, Rachel.
Okay, good. This is Rachel Huffman from Farmers for Freedom. So we have a lot of weird stuff going on here in Norfolk County. Gates has his fingers in it. Public health is, anyways, we'll get into that later. But so in February, you and James talked about SDRs, private property, real asset values plummeting, asset grabs and foreclosures of farms during the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933.
Yep.
In Canada, we had the Canadian Farm Loan Act of 1927.
Yep.
And the Canadian Farm Loan Board 1929, which is now called Farm Credit Canada, the largest lenders to farmers. This is a Crown corporation.
Yep.
So the majority of credit issued to the farmers is held by the Crown. When real asset values plummet farmland, like in 1933, and AAA, realistically, what are we looking at as farmers in Canada, given that the Crown is the largest issuer of credit to farmers?
Yeah. And it gets more nasty than that. I'm really glad that question was asked, because if we get out of metropolitan Canada and we get into the majority of the landmass, certainly if we look at Saskatchewan and we look at Alberta, we look at parts of Ontario, kind of the extreme eastern parts of British Columbia, what we see is that there's a big problem in that the Crown corporations have a thing called a technical default that's written into the contracts. That means you could be making your payments, you could be current on your payments, and the underlying economics of your business could be adjusted, which meant that even if you were current on your loans, they could foreclose. We found this out. Commonwealth corporations, by the way, just to be perfectly clear, were set up so that royalty could reclaim assets. So let's stop the bullshit. This thing was set up to be piracy. That's what it was set up to be. And it was set up that way in 1604. So thank Queen Elizabeth I, because she had her hand in this, and a bunch of others did too. But the modern monarchs haven't done a damn thing to help this situation out. So let's just get clear on the fact that I'm not suggesting that Elizabeth I was the problem. Everybody who's currently wearing gilded crowns and ermine robes are still the problem. But here's the problem. The problem is we've got a problem in Canada, which is actually quite unique to Canada. And that is that you could have a technical default And the technical default could be triggered by the government altering the consumer price of the products coming off farmland. So quite literally, you could be farming. You could be doing a perfect job doing your farming. You could be farming, soybeans or beets or, corn or sorghum or all the cool stuff that's grown all the way across Alberta and Saskatchewan. You could be farming along, doing your farming business. And because the government changes the price subsidy, they could trigger a technical default and trigger a foreclosure, even if you're current on your loans. Now, that's the bad news. And by the way, it is bad news. You can't sugarcoat this. Government of Australia did the same thing with cattle farmers in the, North Queensland and Northern Territory and a bunch of other things where they did the exact same thing. They could foreclose on you even if you were current because your price of your viability of your business got affected by prices they were setting. So essentially, they could create the environment in which you technically defaulted on your loan. The challenge that we need to do is we need to raise the awareness for the benefit of farmers across the US, across Canada, and across Commonwealth countries particularly. We need to raise awareness that says that the public supports farmers. We have to, as people, actually give a rip about the people who are putting food on our tables and that are actually caring for the nutrition of our countries. And the problem we have is we live in these glass house, cities and towns and villages and everything else. And we think things start with the truck that backs up to the grocery store at 3:00 in the morning and unloads groceries. That's not where it starts. And we have to start doing a thing that we started doing a little bit in Queensland. I love this project, and I would love to see it go in Canada, called Soil to Soul. Now, we did it specifically in Australia to deal with the fact that an enormous number of Australian farmers were suiciding because they were finding out that they were having foreclosures or financial troubles, and they actually had an epidemic of farmer suicides in parts of Queensland, parts of New South Wales, but mostly in Queensland. And so this program, Soil to Soul, invited urban dwellers to come out to farms and actually get your bare feet into the soil. What we found was that farmers who felt connected to the people who they were growing food for lived. And the farmers that felt isolated and alone and neglected suicided. We, across the country and around the world, but specifically to this issue, we need to heighten the awareness, which means we need to go out and engage with farmers so that they do not feel isolated and alone. Because the worst thing you can have when you have a financial downturn or any kind of crisis is the sense that you are alone in this. And it is incumbent on the urban communities to actually put their feet, quite literally, bare feet into the soil. We showed that by doing that, we had more conscious consumers of food in the cities, and we actually had farmers in the farmland not suiciding because of it. It's a super important thing to do, and Canada needs to be doing it.
It's a little bit more of that dance you talk about.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Wow.
David and Kim, you guys, this has been absolutely amazing. And just before I pass it over to Alicia here to close us off, because I know that you guys are a little bit limited in your time tonight, but how can people get involved in what you're doing? I know that people aren't able to do as much travel right now, but you talked about, boots on the ground, getting your hands dirty. I mean, this is singing to my soul. And this is something that I've talked about wanting to do with my family for a long time and haven't really known where to start. What can you tell our viewers about how do we get involved in this? And can we do this now? Or, do we have to wait until travel happens? Like, how can we work it in our own community and how can we work it beyond?
Well, do you want to talk about what we're doing just in community building right now?
We've created, we wanted to bring people together too, and a lot of isolated people, and especially now. So we've created the Activate Humanity community site, so people can just go to activatehumanity.com, and actually it's only like months old, and join there. And there's a ton of people, and it's actually literally saved lives because there's people there can ask any question about anything, or just introduce themselves, or say, I live here. Does anyone else live around here? And just start talking and not feeling, because most people that contact us say, I don't have anyone left. All my family think I'm a crazy person. I don't have any friends left.
Yeah.
And they don't realize we are all here. We just don't know how to access them. So we've been a lot of everyone's person, which has been,
you have been,
which has been it's been lovely, but also too, I've had to kind of go, whoa, it got a bit overwhelming for me. But it's now lovely because we connect everyone together, and then they can ask questions about anything and everything, and what lawsuits are going on here or what is going on there. And that's been really, really good. We're also going to do some more online online stuff, because we do a lot of workshops, to help people fully live, or to teach different ways of, as David was talking about, integral accounting in a different way and different lenses on how to actually create enterprises, on how to, if you wanted to have a business idea or kind of anything, or on yourself. It's kind of these tools that we teach, but we usually do them, face to face. But of course, we can't do all that, all the time. And also want to reach more people. And there's people around the world that said, well, can we have any version of something?
And Amanda is part of the problem here, because she's been bugging us to do this.
So we're going to start some, we're just putting together a few things, but we've started the ball rolling on that to get some more online stuff going on.
And you've worked really hard. In fact, in the next probably few weeks, we've got the production team coming next week. Amanda, we got the production team coming to take our content for one of the kind of what we think is going to be an interaction for the Fully Live, what will be the virtual experience. We're going to have a production team here this coming week, and we're going to be building out a online experience, which is not going to be the same as the in-person, but it'll at least get people kind of activating with some tools to start working with. And the cool thing is, those tools, particularly if you're in small groups, like if you get a couple people in your neighborhood, or you get a couple networks of friends or whatever else, if you get some of those tools together and you go through the stuff that we're posting, it's gonna make the doingness of it now happen. Obviously, we are super, super, super passionate about meeting people face to face. So we're all about being wherever people are. And so we're doing a lot of that.
And our website's fullylive.world.
Yeah, fullylive.world. You guys have seen that.
Subscribe
That's been
to that.
out.
And then we can let you know, send out messages on when and how you can access those online things. And also we'll keep obviously telling you about the face-to-face stuff. And when we can travel, it would be great to do a big event in Canada.
Yeah.
Because it'd be fun for, us to get. I see you've got on the screen, that's my actual artistic site with blogs and all sorts of things on there. So that's theartofbeingkim.com is another just fun site where I kind of showcase all things that are me, which is a bit of fun. And
it's beautiful.
I did it was because I didn't want to, people say, are you this or are you with that? And I thought, I'm just going to create a website where I can show that I have all different kind of hats, and depending on what I'm doing that day, and I put it all on there. And a lot of people just go on there just to get inspired, because a lot of people also aren't accessing their creative side and are putting those things off that they've really wanted to do. And I'm trying to inspire people, because I'm actually living it myself. I've had a nursing company, and we still do obviously our workshops and things. And I also love art, and doing that is, just fills my soul. And again, as we talked about earlier, when you're emitting that frequency from within, like everything else flows better, so you can save the world, but also make sure you're starting to do all the things you really love to do.
And so what I would say in closing is something really simple. I have to, and I'm joking kind of, but I'm not joking in kind of another way. Like, Amanda has been relentless, and I love that. Each one of us has a relentless fighter inside of us. We have the ability to go, you know what, this is important to me. And there's nothing that is, that will ever match the passion of a person with persistence. Like, just freaking light it up. If you want to live and if you feel like, you're constrained in your living, that's good. Get in touch with the feeling, get aware of the feeling, but stop going into the victim mode and going into the persistent mode, because it is vital that, we're on this call on a Friday night, hanging out here with you guys. I would not want to be anywhere else. But why? Because the energy of that sense that says we have not just made a difference, but you guys have made a difference to us. I mean, we love to know that we have this army of Canadians who are freaking ready to rush the border. Like, that's awesome.
That's us.
And it's, those are the kinds of fun human stories that are what we can build. So rather than being the withering wallflower going, oh, the world's falling apart and I don't know what to do, like, be Amanda. Just freaking be Amanda. Just go.
Well, you guys have to do me just one favor before
Yeah.
I stop talking altogether. I want you to give Shaq the biggest hug
I
ever,
will.
because I have yet to hug that woman and I just love her to pieces.
We are going to see her tomorrow night.
Yes.
Biggest hug ever.
Biggest hug ever.
Ever.
She is a force of
She is a
nature.
force.
She is so
She's
much
doing
fun.
everything she can.
And
Yep.
you know what? She has some wins she can't talk about,
Mm-hmm.
but some big ass wins, people. Like, she put it,
Nice.
So
I
excited.
might have been part of the process, but it was it was her tenacity that put
Never
a
give
big
up.
win on the board. And a lot of people in our armed services have their life saved because she exists.
She's a warrior.
So, big props to one of our fearless, boot-wearing, take no prisoners. You wouldn't
Yep.
want to be on the wrong side of her. Shaq.
Girl.
I just
Yeah.
want to add one extra thing for everyone who's watching. If you don't know how to do your bit and you kind of want to be urgently doing something, donate to these guys. They do all this out of their own time, like we do, and it actually makes a massive difference to support these lovely ladies. It supports their well-being. It's lovely to have a flow back from you guys to them, and if you can't think of any other way to help, it really makes a difference to support them financially. It really, really does. So please think of that as well.
We appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, David and Kim. You guys are such a brilliant couple, brilliant minds, brilliant energy you both have, and you definitely lit up the room today, because we all love what you have to share. You're warriors of fight and light, and just sharing that with others is making an impact. And it's making an impact not just to deal with what's happening in the COVID world, but this is going to be a long-term journey of changing what humanity knew to be. The life that we're all living right now. The normal life was not so normal, and we're going back to our natural roots. And it's people like you that are actually making a dent into making that real change. So thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. It's been wonderful.
You're very welcome.
Meeting you all in real life.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
We will.
I know. That's me too. It's just been, we're absolutely so grateful that you guys were able to share this evening with us. We really are. And you touch us in so many ways that it's inexplicable. And I will definitely be coming to be inspired by you, Kim. I feel like that's kind of where my journey is going as well. It's a lot of changes, and I think for all of us, there's a lot of changes, and we're finding our tribe. That's kind of how I look at it. We're all finding each other, and we're finding each other for various different reasons. So I feel blessed that you guys were with us today. So I just want to thank you both for coming, and we want to thank everyone who came out to spend the evening with us this evening. And please mark your calendars to join us for our 7th Freedom for Truth Conference on Friday, July 9th. And again, we just want to thank you all. We will win this fight. God bless you all, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, you guys.